In this chapter, I'm going to start with a quick recap of the architecture of the conversion service and how the client that we are about to build fits into it. I then give a quick overview of the initial starter project. So let's get right into it. So here's how the conversion backend we built in the first 5 chapters currently looks like. So we have the conversion queue consisting of potentially a lot of different machines, each interacting with S3 to pull the CAD models out and perform the conversions and then put the results back into S3 and the database. And then we have another machine acting basically as the front end of this conversion service. That's where a potential client connects to upload files and pull data out of this conversion queue. So now let's introduce a client into the picture. So what we're about to build is a HOOPS Communicator based viewer that also has a server backend. And that's an important point. We are not directly connecting to the conversion service API from the client. So while we could certainly do that, it is not best practice. So we are trying to really emulate a real-world web application here with its own server, its own backend. And it's that backend that's going to connect to the conversion service. Okay, let's take a quick look at our initial client-side application, which is attached to this chapter. And as you can see, it's another very basic Node project. I added a few more dependencies already in anticipation of what we're about to write. We also still have our roots folder, we have our controllers, and we're already connecting to mongoDB. You see the dependencies here that they're already included, mongoDB, mongoose. We're also going to need Mulder for file upload and this UID package to generate unique identifiers. We also have a public folder now. This is where the actual client-side web application, the communicator viewer, will reside. All the code that we're going to write on the client will be in this tutorial folder, and as you can see, there's already one file in there called startup.js. But of course, there's a lot of stuff missing, and in order to not have to write our viewer from scratch, we're just going to pull in the standard communicator viewer from the HOOPS Communicator package. Okay, so let's just go to the communicator package, navigate to the web viewer source folder, and simply copy all the content of it into that public directory in our project. So let's just clean this up a little, delete this HWF example and the HWF folder. And let's also rename the viewer. Let's just call it CS viewer. And now all that's left to do is in the CS viewer HTML file, pull in that tutorial startup.js so that we have that accessible. And in there is a single function that we're going to call right before we start the HOOPS Communicator viewer. It's called setup tutorial. All right. Let's test this out. npm install our dependencies. npm start to run our application and have the web server listen on port 3001. And if we now go to Google and type in the right URL, we should see an empty viewer. Okay, that's the end of the chapter.